From Times Square, in the heart of New York City, it's theCUBE, covering Imagine 2018. Brought to you by Automation Anywhere.
Welcome back, everybody. Jeff Frick here with theCUBE. We're in Manhattan, New York City at Automation Anywhere's Imagine Conference 2018. About 1,100 professionals really talking about the future of work, bots, and really how automation is going to help people do the mundane a little bit easier and hopefully free us all up to do stuff that's a little bit more important, a little higher value. We're excited to have our next guest. He's Craig Le Clair, the VP and Principal Analyst from Forrester, and he's been covering this space for a long time. Craig, great to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for having me on. So
first off, just kind of general impressions of the event. Have you been to this before? It's our first time.
Yes, I did a talk here last year, so it was a little bit smaller then. There's obviously more people here today, but it's pretty much, I think it was in Brooklyn last year. So
was it Brooklyn? Okay.
This is an upgrade.
So RP, Robotic Process Automation, more affectionately probably termed as bots.
Yeah.
They're growing. We're seeing a more and more kind of our own interaction with companies kind of on the customer service side.
Yeah.
How are they changing the face of work? How are they evolving as really a way for companies to get more leverage?
Yeah, so I'll make one clarification of your sentence, in that bots do things on behalf of people. What we're talking to in a call center environment is a chatbot, right? So
right.
They have the ability to communicate, or really, I would say, attempt to communicate with people. They're not doing a very good job of it, in my view. But bots work more in the background, and they'll do things for you, right? So, they're having a tremendous effect. I mean, one of the statistics I was looking at the other day, per $1 billion of revenue, the average company had about 150 employees in finance and accounting in 10 years ago. Now instead of having 120 or 130, it's already down to 70 or 80. And that's because the bots that we're talking about here can mimic that human activity for posting to a general ledger, for switching between applications, and really move those folks on to different occupations, shall we say.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Jeff Immelt just gave his little keynote address, and he said, this is the easiest money you'll find in digital transformation, is implementing these types of technology.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it was a great talk, by the way, by Jeff, but companies have been under a lot of pressure to digitally transform,
right.
Due to really the mobile, mobile peaked around 2012, and that pushed everyone into this gap that companies couldn't really deal with the consumer technology that was out there, right? So then you had the Ubers of the world and digital transformation. So there's been a tremendous focus on digital transformation, but very little progress.
Right.
When we do surveys, only 11% are showing any progress at all. So along comes this technology, robotic process automation, that allows you to build bots without changing any of the back-end systems. There's no data integration. There's no APIs involved. There's no big transformation, consultants flying in. There's not even a requirements document, because you're going to start with recording the actual human activity at a workstation. So
right.
It's been an elixir, frankly, for CIOs to go into their boss and say, you know what, we're doing great. I've just made this invoice processing system a lot better.
Right.
We're on our path to digital transformation.
And it's really a different strategy, because like you said, it's not kind of rip and replace the old infrastructure. You're not rewriting a lot of applications,
which
but
is
you're
one
really
of the,
overlaying it, right?
Which is one of the potential downfalls, is that sometimes you need to move to that new cloud platform. You don't want to some extent, the technology institutionalizes what could be a very bad process, one that needs to be modernized, one that needs to be blown up. We're still using the airline reservation systems from 1950s, and layers and layers and layers and layers built upon them. At some point, you're going to have to design a new experience with new technology. So there's some dangers with the seduction of building bots against core systems.
Right. So the other thing that's happening, right, is the ongoing, I love Moore's Law, it's much more about an attitude, I think, than the physics of a microprocessor, but compute and store and networking, 5G is just around the corner. Cloud-based systems now really make that available in a much different way, and as you said, mobile experience delivers it to us. So as those kind of continue to march on and asymptotically approach zero and infinite scale, we're not there yet, but we're every day getting a little bit closer. Now we're seeing AI, we're seeing machine learning, we're seeing kind of a new kind of class of horsepower, if you will, that just wasn't available before at the scale it's at today. So now you throw that into the mix. These guys have been around 14 years. how does AI start to really impact things?
It's a fascinating subject and question. I mean, we're at Forrester talking about the forces of automation. And by the way, RPA is just a subset of a whole set of technologies. AI, you mentioned, and AI is a subset of automation, and there's deep learning is a subset of AI, and you go on and on. There are 30, 40 different automation technologies. And these will have a tremendous force, both on jobs in the future, and on shifting control, really, to machines. So right now, you can look at this little bubble we had of consumer technology and mobile is shifting a lot of power to the consumer. And that's been great for our convenience. But now with algorithms being developed that are going to make more and more decisions, you could argue that the power is going to shift back to those that own the machines and those that own the algorithms. So there's a power shift, control shift that we're really concerned about. There's the convergence of the physical and digital world, which is IoT and so forth, and that's going to drive new scale in companies, which are going to further dehumanize some of our life, right? So that affects, it squeezes humans out of the process.
Right.
Blockchain gets rid of intermediaries, that are there to really transfer ideas and money and so forth. So all of these forces of automation, which is we think is going to be the next big conversation in the industry, are going to have tremendous effect societally and in business.
Right. Well, there's certainly, there's the case where you can't necessarily reskill a whole class of an occupation, right? The one that we're all watching for, obviously, is truck drivers, right? It employs a ton of people. Autonomous vehicles are right around the corner. On the other hand, right, there's going to be new jobs that we don't even know of what they're going to be. I think I heard a quote, all the graduating seniors, it's graduation season. Most of them are going to work in jobs that don't even exist 10 years from now.
Very
and
true.
The other thing is every company we talk to has got tons of open recs and they can't get enough people to fulfill what they need. And then Mahir, I think, touched on an interesting point in the keynote where, now we're starting to see literal population growth slow down in developing countries like I think Japan is at the leading edge, and you mentioned Europe, and I'm not sure where the US is. So it's kind of this interesting dichotomy. On one side, machines are going to take more and more of our jobs, or more and more portions of our job. On the other hand, we don't have the people to do those jobs necessarily anyway, not necessarily today, but down the road. And will we get to kind of more this nirvana state where people are being used to do higher value types of activities, and we can push off some of the crap and mundane that still, unfortunately, takes such a huge portion of our day-to-day world.
Yeah. So one thought that some of us believe at Forrester, I being one of them, is that we're at a kind of neutral point right now, where a lot of the AI, which is really the most disruptive element we're talking about here. RPA is no autonomous learning capability. There's no AI component to RPA. But when AI kicks in, and we've seen evidence of it, as we always do, first in the consumer world, where it's a light version of AI in Netflix. There's no one with a spreadsheet sitting there, figuring out which one to watch, right? They're taking in data about your behavior, putting you in clusters, mapping them to correlating them, and so forth. We think that business hasn't really gotten going with AI yet. So in other words, this period that you just described, where there seems to be 200,000 people hired every month in the ADP reports, there's actually 50,000 truck driver jobs open right now, and you see help wanted signs everywhere.
Right.
We think that that's really just because business hasn't really figured out what to do with the technology yet.
Right.
If you project 3 or 4 years, our projections are that there will be a significant number of, particularly in the cubicles that RPA attacks, a significant number of dislocation of current employment, and that's going to create this job transformation. We think is going to be more the issue than replacement. And if you go back in history, automations have always led to transformation.
Right.
And I won't go through the examples, so we don't have time, but there are many.
Right.
And we think that's going to be the case here, and that automation dividends, we call them, are going to be are being way underestimated. That there are going to be new opportunities and so forth. The skills mismatch is the issue.
Right.
You have. What RPA attacks are the 60 million that are in cubicles today in the U.S. and the average education there is high school. So they're not going to be thrown out of the cubicles and become data scientists overnight, right? So there's going to be a massive growth in the gig economy, and there's an informal and a formal segment of that, that's going to result in people having to patch together their lives in ways they hadn't had before. So there's going to be some pain there. But there are also going to be some strong dividends that will result from this level of productivity that we're going to see, again, in a few years, because I think we're in a neutral point right now.
Right. Love of Moore's Law doesn't get enough credit, right? We overestimate in the short term and then underestimate the long term of these effects.
Absolutely.
And one of the big things on AI is really moving from this in real time, right? And all these fast databases and fast analytics as we move from a world where we are looking in the rearview mirror and making decisions on what happened in the past to getting more predictive and then even more prescriptive. So
yes.
The value unlock there is very, very real. I'm never fascinated to be amazed by how much inefficiency there still is every time we go to these conferences. We thought we solved it all with SAP and ERP. That was clearly not the case.
Not the case. Plenty of work to do.
But it's even interesting, even from last year. You mentioned that there's the significant delta just from year to year is pretty amazing.
Yes, I've been amazed at the level of innovation in the core digital worker platforms, the RPA platforms in the last year has been pretty amazing. What we were talking about a year ago when I spoke at this conference and what we're talking about now, the areas are different.
Right,
we're not talking about basic control of the applications on the desktop. We're talking about integration with text analytics. We're talking about combining process mining information with desktop analytics to create new visions of the process. We weren't talking about any of that a year ago. We're talking about bot stores, that are out there and downloadable robots. And again, not talking about that last year at all. So just a lot of good progress, good solid progress, and I'm very happy to be part of it.
And really this kind of the front end. So much of the development is manifested on the front end, where we used to always talk about citizen developers back in the day. Fred Luddy was just highlighted ServiceNow's most innovative company. That was his vision, a citizen developer. And then we've talked about citizen integrators, which is really an interesting concept. And now we're talking about really citizens or analysts having the ability via these tools to do integrations and to deliver new kind of workflows that really weren't possible before unless you were a hardcore programmer. Yeah,
although I think that conversation is a little bit premature in this space, right? I think that most of the bot development requires programming skills today, and they're going to get more complicated in that most of the bot activities today are doing 3 decisions or less, or they're looking at 4 or 5 apps that are involved, or they're doing a series of 400 or 500 clicks that they're emulating. And it's going to, the progression is to get the digital workers to get smarter in incorporating various AI components. So you're going to have to be able to deal statistically with algorithm developments and data and learning and all of that. So it's not the core of this. The part of it that's going to be more disruptive to business is going to be done by pretty skilled developers and programmers and data scientists and statistical, folks going through. But having said that, you're going to have, a digital workforce, that's got to be managed and has to be viewed as an employee at some level to get the proper governance.
Right.
So you have to know when that digital worker was born, when they were hired, who do they report to, when were they terminated, and what their performance review is. You're going to be doing performance reviews on the digital workers with the kind of dashboard analytics that we have. And that's the only way to really govern. Because the distinction in this category is that you're giving these bots human credentials, and you're letting them access the most trusted application boundaries, areas in a company. So you better treat them like employees, and if you want proper governance. Which becomes tricky, as Mihir said, when you go from 1 bots to 10 bots to 10,000. Then the management of this becomes, not insignificant. Right. So Craig, I want to give you the last word. You said, big changes since last year. If we sit down a year from now, 2019, Lord knows where we'll be. What are we going to talk? What are we going to talk about? What do you see as kind of the next, 12-month progression? I hope we don't go to Jersey after Brooklyn, New York. And,
keep moving. Well,
I see Jersey over there, but it's where it belongs, across the river. I'm from Jersey, so I can say that. I think next year we're going to see more integration of AI modules into the digital worker. I think with a lot of these, explosive markets like RPA is, there's always a bit of a cooling off period, and I think you're going to see some tapering off of the growth of some of the platform companies, AA, but also their peers and compatriots. That's natural. I think that the area has been a little bit, analysts and tech industry loves change. If there's no change, there's nothing for us to write about, right? So we usually over-project. Now, in this case, the $2.8 billion market projection 5 years out that I did, is being exceeded, which is rare. But I expect some tapering off in a year where there's not a ceiling hit, but that you end up with going through these more simple applications that can be robotized easily. And now you're looking at slightly more complicated scenarios that take a little more AI and analytics embeddedness and require a little more care. They have a little more opaque, and a little more thought, and that'll slow things down a bit. But I still think we're on our way to a supermarket and a lot of productivity here.
So just a little less low-hanging fruit, and you got to step up the game a little bit.
I guess you said it much simpler than I did.
I'm a simple guy,
But that's
Craig.
why you're the MC and I'm just an analyst.
All right, Craig. Well, thanks for sharing your insight. Really appreciate it, and do look forward to talking to you next year, and we'll see if that comes true.
I appreciate it. Take care now.
He's Craig Le Clair. I'm Jeff Frick. You're watching theCUBE from Automation Anywhere Imagine 2018.